Prime Minister Leo Varadkar in the last half hour has said that all schools, colleges and childcare facilities in Ireland will close until March 29th.
This is the calm before the storm, before the surge. And when it comes, and it will come, never will so many ask so much of so few.
12th of March 2020. This day, 3 years ago. Back then, I was getting ready for my confirmation, and 3 years later now, I'm getting ready for my junior cert. A lot has changed, including people's mental and physical health, and in this documentary, that's what we're going to look at. I've sat down some of my relatives, some of my friends, and some people I've never met before to get their perspective on what life was like during these hard times and how their mental and physical health developed.
Now, do I say good morning everyone or anything?
If you want to.
When I heard about this virus, it was quite frightening because all the clubs that I attend stopped. And then after it's been going about 3 months, they decided to have a session with one of the clubs, and you had to take your own mug with you for a cup of tea, and you had to sit at least 2 meters away from the other person, and you had to wear a mask. Well, it was a bit off-putting.
Yeah.
So after it was all over, they didn't have any more clubs at that time, but I've never returned to the club, because I've got into the habit of staying in and not going out. And yet, when I do go out, I do enjoy going out, but I've got it in my mind that I don't want to mix with people. Although I've never had COVID, and Joanne, my daughter, whom I live with, has had COVID. And when she used to come into me, she put a mask on, so I never managed to catch it. Yeah. My physical health has changed because I used to go out for a walk every day and used to make a thing that I did 6,000 steps, and that has all stopped, and I can't see me getting back into it.
Yeah.
And I don't like to go shopping or don't like to go out anywhere. I've got so used to not doing it that I just feel that I can't do it now.
Yeah.
I used to be a chatterbox, and now when I meet people, I can't think of anything to talk about. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what can I say? What can I talk about? And because I was never like that. I was always spontaneous, so rubbish came out of my mouth. Yeah. Things are getting better, and I know now that I do go up to the shop. I get in the car and go up to the shop, come back again, and I quite enjoy it. So I think you should put an effort into trying to get out. I haven't had COVID because we live in the country, but then that's what makes it so lonely, because you've no neighbours. Yeah, that's a big disadvantage of, but you're probably safer because you're not near the virus, which is a big plus, really. Because I'm sure other people that live in towns would love to live somewhere where they haven't really got any worries about that. And then you would think at my age that I wouldn't worry about anything, worry about virus or being on my own. No, you do.
Do you want me to say who I am first?
Yeah.
I'm Dr. Joanne Stuart, OBE, Chief Executive of the Northern Ireland Tourism Alliance. COVID was one of those things that I started hearing about in January. Obviously, overseas tourism is important for us, and the Chinese is a growing market. And we started hearing rumours about COVID in China. So we were starting to see cancellations of people from China coming to Northern Ireland. And initially we thought it was just going to affect the Chinese market. And then things happened in Italy, and we could start to see that this actually could become a pandemic. For tourism, we were decimated through COVID because everything had to close, and tourism is not something that you can do online or do click and collect for. So it was a really difficult time. So COVID for me, I was never furloughed. It was one of the busiest times I think I've ever had in my career, because we were looking at businesses that were failing, had no money coming in, and just didn't know how they were going to survive. So it was just a really stressful time. The good thing about COVID was living where I live in the country meant that, you know, a couple of miles down the road I have the beach. I'm fortunate that I have a big garden. We have national parks around the place, so we were able to get out and actually be close to nature, which was really good. But the stress of work was constant. You didn't know what you were going to get up to the next day. So from that perspective, as I say, from my mental point of view, it was just, you just felt so helpless because things were so bad, and it was, what could you do? You know, how could you help businesses? I could definitely see how anxious my mum was. Obviously she wasn't going out. You know, she had quite an active life before COVID, but the anxiety just got worse as we went through COVID. Mum didn't want to leave the house, and certainly, you know, once the worst of COVID passed, I have seen that Mum is happier being at home. She doesn't really want to go out. She gets very nervous and stressed out about the smallest of things. I think from my perspective of COVID, what I have seen is I'm much happier being at home. I got a dog through COVID, which was one of the best things. So it did make sure that, you know, that I went out and got out into nature. It's made me think differently about where I want to live. I think before COVID, I was thinking about moving back to Belfast, but having been through COVID, having seen how technology was so quickly taken on board, so that, you know, you didn't have to go out as much. You know, you could interact with people through technology. It's made me realise that you can be anywhere to do your job, and actually being near nature is really important. Looking back and seeing the impact of COVID, it has certainly made us all much more aware of our well-being, of our work-life balance, and certainly in tourism and hospitality, we saw that a lot of people didn't come back. You know, they decided that they wanted a different life. But I think when we thought COVID was over, we thought, gosh, you know, that's it, we can sort of relax. And then of course we had the war in Ukraine, we've had the energy crisis, we've had the cost of living crisis. So it just feels that it's been one thing after another. And one thing I would say is I'm just exhausted. I just feel that I haven't stopped, and you just feel you need some space, you know, to really process everything that we have been through. But interestingly for me, obviously, you know, there was no air travel, so I mean, there was no tourism. And even with the difficulties around cost of living, people have realised how important travel is. And so therefore it's the last thing that goes. So I think you're finding lots of people are their television channel subscriptions, you know, they maybe don't have as many of those, but they know it's really important for leisure travel, to spend time with family and friends. And so from a tourism perspective, actually the future looks brighter than we may have thought. But we do need to think about, I think sustainability has become very important. So people are thinking about the impact that they're having, especially when we saw, lots of people going to the countryside or going to the beaches and the impact that that had. So we as an industry are now very much focused on, well, how can we ensure that we are as sustainable as possible? So I think it has changed how people think about different things. But in some ways, I think it's been good. It's accelerated a lot of adoption of technology. I remember before COVID trying to do virtual meetings, and it was so difficult. Whereas now we've got the technology, everybody's used to it. I think it's been really good because you get to see the human side of people, whether it's people's pets jumping up, when you're on a Zoom call, or children coming in. So you see the more human side of people, and I think that has made our interactions better. I think people are more relaxed in work, so people are used to being more casual, and I think that has been a good thing, but it's certainly when you talk about transformation, for something to happen so quickly, that's when change happens, and I suppose the only thing that we know is that change is constant.
I was a bit shocked when, for me, the big thing was I was teaching and I was just, doing my day-to-day teaching, quite busy, and I did get a bit of a shock when they just went locked down everyone at home, onto online teaching, big change. But yeah, I didn't really think it was going to last as long as it did. But at the same, there was pros and cons to it. It was nice not to be commuting all the time, but the feeling of uncertainty was not nice. I lived in Lucan. It was kind of okay for me where I was living in that I had the best of both worlds. I was close to shops. I could go for big long walks and all that sort of stuff, so I could have the best of both worlds, bit of nature, but also didn't have to drive miles and miles and miles to go to the shops or any of that sort of stuff. So Lucan it's not really city, it's not really countryside, it's somewhere in between. For the first couple of weeks of it, I didn't jump on the exercise thing at all, but then eventually I was persuaded to and got very into it. I haven't kept it up, but all through COVID, I got really into exercising and going for walks and jogging and all this sort of stuff. Mental health thing, to be honest, I didn't really notice any difference. I was grand with the break, the peace and quiet. I kind of embraced that. I read millions of books, which I love doing, so I was happy out in that sense, yeah.
If someone was struggling with mental health, what would you recommend for them to do?
Well, obviously don't keep it to themselves, share it with the people that love them, and seek, external help. But definitely talking about it helps, yeah. And get some external help, because there definitely are people out there who can assist with this. Don't just hide it away and try and deal with it yourself. Everyone who goes through that will always say that great sense of relief the moment that they shared their difficulties with someone else. Yeah.
I think when COVID started, I sort of just viewed it as like time off of school. I don't think I thought of it too seriously. I mean, like, we were just in primary school, so I don't think I really thought of anything too seriously. But like, I really didn't expect it to last as long as it did. I don't think my mental health was that great at the time anyway. And so I don't think it helped having to be stuck at home alone. I don't know, I think I didn't even have that many friends at the time either, so I couldn't even like text anyone. So I think, yeah, it was quite lonely for me. So yeah, no, it definitely didn't help my mental health whatsoever. In the countryside, it's like way more secluded, and everyone's already far enough apart for them to already be social distancing. And so, like, I presume that it would have been easier in that sense, where I mean, people were less at risk of getting COVID. And like in the city, well, people were way more at risk. And just in general, I think people in the city are more social, and so I reckon, like, mentally, they would have like struggled with having to deal with just suddenly being apart from everyone. And like as well, like even in shops and stuff, it was like only a certain amount of people were allowed in, and so it would have made things more difficult. And I think it really slowed things down, because, you know, usually like the city is just super busy and ongoing, but COVID like sort of just put that to a halt. I don't know, like I guess in the countryside as well, like I wouldn't know, but I wouldn't say you have a lot of opportunities to socialise, because people are so far away, and COVID would have put like even more of a strain on that. So I presume that would have been quite lonely. My physical health changed like dramatically. I didn't do much exercise as it was, and like being stuck at home, I didn't do any exercise whatsoever. And so I think especially after, like, well, not after the pandemic, but after like we didn't have to quarantine, like I was just super unfit. But like I think I mainly struggled like mentally, like being stuck at home by myself and like with my parents. But like, I don't know, like when you're that young, I don't think your main priority or focus is to socialize with your parents. And I don't know, I think it really affected like my social life. And even like especially after quarantine, like I had no social skills. I didn't talk to anyone. If I did, it would have been over like text and social media and stuff. And I think that became like a really large part of my life over that time. And social media really isn't the best place, especially when you're already struggling mentally. And I think, yeah, a lot of aspects of COVID like damaged my mental health. Even just like, I think I wouldn't be the way I am now if COVID hadn't happened, like 100%. But I think it did help. Like it let me like sit down and think, really, because before, like, I was just like immature, and like my main focus was just hanging out with my friends. But I was spending time to myself, so I was really able to just like think about who I am and everything. And so I think a lot changed during COVID for me.
There's absolutely no denying that COVID-19 was a hard time for everyone, whether that be struggles with their mental health, their physical health, or just their life in general. It was a tough time, and there's no denying that. But the thing is that humans, what they do best is they overcome, and things do get better. And no matter if you think you're in a dark place, if you're in a really sad mood, you have to remember that there's always light at the end of the tunnel, and you always have to keep hope.
Thank